Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center. And for more than basically 20 years, now nearly 30 years, I've been working with accounting professionals. It's in that I've been able to actually assist individuals both starting and building their firms, offering quality accounting services, and most importantly, getting paid what they're worth. It's here on the show that we actually dive into various things that you need to consider as you're running your business. Things that may range from marketing, selling, to training your staff. Perhaps it's your own mental health. But the important thing here is offering those quality services, retaining those clients, and obviously getting you paid. Now, as we're talking about these things, I bring on the show experts, individuals who are basically those people that have insights as to what we can be doing to mirror what they've accomplished, or perhaps take things to our clients to better service them. And today is going to be exactly that. It's going to be a wonderful conversation. I'm excited to have on the show Steven Weisberg. He happens to be the founder and lead attorney of the W-Tax Group, bringing over a decade of experience helping individuals, businesses, and business owners resolve tax debt, audits, and other IRS disputes. Steven's client-first approach actually starts with a debt or tax debt analysis to provide absolute transparency and customized solutions designed to meet the unique needs of each of the clients. He has a proven track record of delivering favorable results and has made a highly sought-after tax defense attorney nationwide of himself. So, Steven, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for having me on here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation. You know, one of the things that's obviously true is death and taxes. So it's clearly something in the accounting realm we're dealing with. So let me get a little bit of a history as to why you got involved in tax. I mean, both the attorney side of things, the accounting side of things. Why in the world this is a profession?
Some of it's kind of interesting, some of it's not, but I'll tell it all.
Okay.
So I went to law school. I got out of law school in 2008, which, and I'm here in Detroit, Michigan. So that wasn't the greatest time to be really anywhere economically, but in Detroit, it certainly wasn't a good time.
Yeah.
But I was here in Detroit. I started working as a corporate bankruptcy attorney.
Okay.
And we were running some pretty big bankruptcies for some big auto suppliers. Ultimately, when we would do these bankruptcies, Ford, Chrysler, and GM would have these large secured loans that would be out there, and then there would be small mom and pop stores and vendors that had their unsecured loans, basically, and not loans, but they had provided goods or services. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it was always GM, Chrysler, and Ford. They were getting paid in full. And the mom and pop vendors were getting paid literally 1 to 2 cents on the dollar.
Oh my heavens.
So, here in Detroit, the car companies are actually beloved to some extent, and they do a lot of great things, charity work, put a lot of money to good places. So I'm not, bashing them certainly by any means. But at the same time, I just felt like, do I really want to be doing this where I'm just working to get the car companies to be paid back in full? And then you have these mom and pop vendors who, I really identified with, who were getting nothing. And so after about 5 years, I decided that I wanted to move into something else, really, where I was moving into working with, like I said, the small, medium-sized businesses. And I could see the work that I was doing and the impact I was making on a daily basis. So I set out to do that. I set out to really, work for myself as well. That's kind of the ultimate dream for a lot of people. And it just kind of made sense that I would get into tax because I had a good friend who was an attorney as well. He was practicing tax resolution, and I worked with him, and he taught me what I know. And then from there, we went on. So the tax part, in terms of getting to the tax part, is not so interesting. I just kind of fell into it. But in terms of, where I came from and why I wanted to get into tax, that had a little bit more background to it.
I like it. Coming at it from a legal standpoint, you're definitely bringing a new perspective or a unique perspective, because clearly we're looking at it through the accountant lens. And so I think that's a nice thing to distinguish. But let's kind of go into this tax idea of what it is you're offering. You mentioned tax resolution. I think it's fair to say that in tax, there's really 3 types of services: tax preparation, tax planning or strategy, and then tax resolution. Would you mind describing those 3 and what it is that you're specializing in as it relates to tax resolution services?
Sure. So, it's all what I do. I don't do, well, I shouldn't say, we do some tax prep at my office, but that's not what we want to be doing, and that's not what we advertise. Our niche and our expertise is tax resolution, and that is representing taxpayers, well, whether it be an individual, whether it be a business and or the business owner, who have quote unquote tax issues. A lot of that comes down to tax debt, but it also could be audits. It also, it could be a multitude of issues that they have with the IRS where they're adverse to the IRS, and that they need some help figuring out how to resolve those issues. The IRS is, really the largest collection agency on the planet, and the most powerful. And you're really at a disadvantage when you are a layman in terms of that aspect of it. So I help people get those issues resolved.
So when it comes to, let's say, an accounting professional, someone who's considering becoming someone who services these tax resolution situations, as I understand it, you've got that tax advice, or excuse me, that legal advice that you bring to the table as a lawyer. There's EAs and CPAs that come at it. What would be different about your legal approach versus what a CPA or an EA may bring to the table for an EA, for a tax resolution client?
Well, I'll first say that if any CPAs and EAs watch this, they're going to kill me if I say anything bad about them. And so I have nothing bad to say about them. They're actually great. Any one of the three of us can do the work. And I know great CPAs, great EAs who do the work. That said, on the attorney side, you just come from a different school of thought. You're more into the negotiations. You have more expertise in arguing points and advocating for your client, and that's just where that where you come from. That's kind of the cloth that you're cut from, is that. Whereas CPAs and enrolled agents might not necessarily come from that in general. The one place where the attorneys do provide extra service is any petitions into U.S. tax court. The CPA and enrolled agent could ultimately get admitted. It's a very difficult thing to do, and a lot of them don't do that, and they'll refer cases to me once we have to petition tax court.
Now, one of the things that I find fascinating is there's a lot of discussion right now going on that there are more tax resolution cases that should be coming on the scene, and that there's a huge opportunity from an accounting perspective to be able to service these individuals simply because there are going to be more people that need tax resolution assistance. So
Sure.
I'm curious, how do you see the market? Do you see it as something that is expanding, that the IRS is actually going to be sending out notifications and doing more of these types of type situations? Or is this something that you feel is just kind of status quo and it is what it is?
Yeah, no, I think it will be expanding. And there's a school of thought out there that, Donald Trump is abolishing the IRS, and Doge came in and fired everyone. And that doesn't matter right now, because what is going to happen here is, number one, the IRS is going to be working with artificial intelligence a lot more. And I think there's going to be more notices going on. I think there's actually going to be more levies going on, more garnishments, because they're not going to have to think about it. It's just going to go to their computer and it's going to be spit out. But on top of that, with less personnel at the IRS, it's going to be impossible for American taxpayers to get anything done and to resolve any disputes with the IRS. And that's certainly not a good thing. In terms of the taxpayers, I'd much rather have it be that these taxpayers are able to handle certain things. I wouldn't necessarily advise them to do things on their own without having representation, but at the same time, anything where it's harder for the taxpayer to do it, I'm not a fan of. That said, for tax professionals who are representing taxpayers with tax debt or audits, they're going to need help. They're going to need more and more help than ever before, because they're not going to have the people to talk to get things resolved on their own. They're going to be less and less people, and that's true. We already know that. And they're going to have no one to help them get these things resolved. They're going to need tax professionals. So I see it expanding a lot.
In the simplest of terms, what I think is happening here is you are going to see an increase in those individuals that are actually being notified of the issues that they're facing as it relates to their tax liabilities. They're in a resolution situation where they do need some assistance, whether it is with a CPA, EA, or a tax attorney as yourself. But the thing that I think is most important here is the fact that without that representation, they're going to struggle because they're dealing with that Goliath of basically the IRS, and with the different systems and services that the IRS has to actually manage this, they're going to be overwhelmed. So I think the services being offered are very valid. So the next question I have is, you've got basically this ability to market and go out there and try and find those people who would benefit from these services. I'm curious, from a marketing point of view, what are you finding that's effective, that resonates and brings in these qualified candidates?
To be honest, and that's something, I did want to talk about. I do a lot of referral relationships. And that's really been the best for me over and above everything. So
Okay.
we'll talk about referral relationships, but in general, in terms of the marketing, you certainly don't want to fear monger, but you want to play up that this is going to be very difficult for them to get done on their own. You want to play up, and because it's true that the IRS is the most powerful collection agency on the planet, and that you have very little leverage, almost no leverage. They're going to have to worry about wage garnishments and bank levies. On top of that, they have to understand that they don't know what they don't know. Why? I mean, why should they? They don't do this on a daily basis. They don't work
That's
with
right.
the IRS on a daily basis. So, they may call the IRS and think, okay, I got into a resolution, if they're actually able to do it, but it probably is not the most favorable resolution for them. The IRS is not there to help them. The IRS is there to take their money as quickly as possible and as much as possible. That's what they're there for. The collections aspect of it is there to get that money as quickly as possible. They're not going to tell you what's best for them. So you have to play on those actual issues that they're going to have. Again, not fear mongering, but actually explain to them, this is the risks that you're taking by not having a tax professional on your side.
I'm really actually quite grateful that you brought up the fear mongering that you mentioned. One of the things that I think is very common as one's marketing the resolution services that one offers is typically it does fall into that fear mongering of, that's why the advertisement is working, is because it's actually giving the impression to the potential customer that they have to actually get this assistance.
Right.
And so, do you feel that there's a different approach that you can take other than fear mongering to get someone to reach out and say, could you help me?
Well, I mean, kind of what I touched on is, and I think, by the way, first of all, I think there's different ways to do this in terms of fear
Of course.
mongering. It's like, you see some of those national players out there saying, they're going to take your house, and this, like, the IRS is not taking your house. I mean, maybe if you owe $1 million, but otherwise the IRS is not taking your house. Like, the IRS kind of got out of that business a long time ago. So there's certain ways of doing this where you're just making sure that they understand what the risks are.
Yeah.
That said, I think you should focus on, it's a risk, but it's also, an addition, meaning like you're putting them in the plus side, where you're talking about the favorable resolutions that you can get them into, and to make sure that they're in the best place possible for themselves, so that they can move forward with their lives with peace of mind and have a reasonable and favorable resolution moving forward, so they can actually abide by it and they can move on with their lives. So you want to talk about your value add, what you can provide to them.
I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, one of the things that I'd like to also add is, in addition to perhaps that fear mongering that that very well could work as a marketing method, is you can focus on, I'm in your corner, I'm here to help. Let's make this a process that can be quick and easy, and something that you can confidently come out of. I mean, that kind of messaging can resonate.
Learn the turnkey process for starting and building a successful accounting business. It's in this course that you'll actually experience 4 specific trainings. Part 1, your business plan, everything you need to know to get started. Part 2, how to price your services, the pros and cons of different methods, and the best way to price your services that are both profitable and professional. Marketing and selling your services so that you can actually be top of mind, but more importantly, how to actually be seen as a trusted strategic advisor. And last of all, mapping it all out. 5 principles in running a profitable business so that you can be both competent and confident in the services you're providing. Learn now what it is you can be doing to start and build your own successful accounting, bookkeeping, or tax business. Go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today.
Now, as you market this, I'm curious, a lot of people do, especially the national players, leverage the television, the radio. Do you find any value in the social media side of things, marketing it that way?
I do. I find a lot of value in social media. The place that I first started was actually LinkedIn. I have found a lot of success on LinkedIn, and it may be in a different way than you originally might think. When you're
Uh-huh.
talking about TikTok, when you're talking about Instagram and even Facebook, you are marketing directly to the consumer. You're marketing to the clients and talking about what you can do for them, why they might need you, all of that stuff. When you're on LinkedIn, my strategy has been to really market to other tax professionals who don't provide these services.
Love it.
And I have a plenty of referral relationships that I've created where they're tax professionals that saw my work and saw my posts and saw the papers that I write on LinkedIn, and ultimately said, this is the thought leadership guy. This is the expert authority here. He's the guy that knows what's going on in this realm in terms of tax resolution. I feel comfortable sending my clients to him. That's where I found the most success, and that's really how I think you should use LinkedIn.
I love that you've brought this up because one of the things that I have found is so many of the people I'm interacting with do choose to specialize their services where they solely offer, let's say, tax preparation services. They don't get into the planning. They don't offer strategies.
Uh-huh.
They don't do resolutions. But they do is exactly as you had mentioned. They actually align themselves and have a collaboration. And all of a sudden, that collaborative relationship means that there's this reciprocal back and forth of different business. You're doing the resolution, they're doing the preparation,
Yep.
someone else is doing the strategy with the planning. All that means that you're each kind of niching in your services, you're specializing. And that's one of the things that I think I'm hearing here that I really like.
Yeah.
So that's valuable. So now let's take it to another level and just kind of talk about the nuances of the business. As it relates to tax resolution services, for those that haven't done any resolution, what does that really look like as a service? And at the same time, how do you package or price that service? So what is it that you're truly doing for the client? And what is the time commitment? What does the service itself look like?
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about tax. That's the easiest one to
Yeah.
use as an example. You are helping someone that isn't able to pay in full. Certainly, you're
Mhm.
helping them come to a resolution where they can either pay over time. They can also potentially save money in terms of the taxes that they actually pay, and you're also helping them protect their rights. Especially when there's a revenue officer, but even when it's in collections. So you're doing all of those things. What you might be doing is negotiating what's called an installment agreement for them. That's a monthly payment plan. But there's so you can get them, a 60-month payment plan for something that they thought initially they're gonna have to pay all up in front, and they don't know what
Correct.
they're gonna do. But there's also other options called partial payment installment agreement. That's where, let's just say, for example, you owe $100,000. The IRS has 10 years to collect from you. And let's say the balance owed was from 2016. And the IRS only has a few more years to collect from you before it gets written off. If you're able to negotiate a partial pay installment agreement, and that's just for easy use of numbers, just say they're paying that you get them into a installment agreement where they're paying $100 per month. Well, if there's, let's say, 2 years left on that statute of limitations, and they're paying $100 a month, but they owe $100,000, and that $100,000 is going to drop off in 2 years. Well, certainly they never end up paying the total amount of the balance due. And so that's a huge win for them. We'll talk about offering compromise, in a few moments, but partial pay installment agreement is a great way to help your clients, spend less or pay less than what they actually owe. So there's, multiple types of installment agreements. There's one installment agreement where you don't disclose your financials. There's other where you do disclose your financials. There's installment agreements that need to be considered when that statute of limitations is longer, when it's shorter. So there's a lot in terms of installment agreements. There's also what's called currently non-collectible status, where the taxpayer does not have to pay the IRS anything on a monthly basis, and they're protected from any sort of collection activity. Now, that's not always a long-term option. It's can be temporary. If the taxpayer owes or starts making more money down the line, the IRS may look at that again. But for instance, someone who might be just receiving Social Security, and I was able to negotiate currently non-collectible status for them. They may be in currently non-collectible status for the entire length of that statute of limitations, and after that 10 years, again, the balance drops off, and they've only, they haven't paid anything because they're in a currently non-collectible status. And then finally, we can do a whole thing on offer and compromise, and maybe I'll leave it for a further conversation. But the offer and compromise is the resolution you hear on the radio. You hear about the settle for less. You offer a certain amount for to basically compromise to get rid of it.
Calls.
The total amount of the tax that's owed.
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about what you just shared is the fact that to the IRS, these are different options that they'll accept. But the thing that's interesting is to the individual or the business who's now owing, they may not be aware of these different options. And clearly,
Yep.
What you're able to do is help articulate these are choices that may not be readily offered by the IRS because they're going to come in and they're just going to want it paid off in full and be done with it. But you've got these different options that can come to the table. And all of a sudden, what you're doing is you're helping the client navigate through these different choices, which is the best one for them. And so I think that's very important. So as it relates to your services and you're working with the client and representing them before the IRS, how are you paid for this? How do you actually price your services and actually package what it is you're doing?
So I use a flat fee.
Okay.
I come from being an attorney where everything was hourly, and I hated the hourly. It's almost like a conflict of interest, right? You get paid by how much time you put in. So sometimes maybe you want to put in more time. And I'm not saying that's the ethical thing to do. I just know that that conflict of interest, even if you're not doing it intentionally, maybe you're spending more time, to get where you need to go, and you're getting paid more. So I do a flat fee. I think really that's the best way to do it. I do it as a value proposition. What kind of value can I bring to the table? And I'm basing it on that way. The fee, you can do it a couple different ways. You certainly can ask for it all up front, but not everyone has that ability to do it. So generally, I ask for a deposit of some sort, and then I give them a payment plan, a monthly payment plan, moving forward. Now, you might say, well, some of these taxpayers are people who aren't paying the IRS. Why are they going to pay you? And that makes sense. And certainly there are receivables that drop off, but that's just like any business. I've found when people are motivated and really want to get something done, they will pay you over time. They'll pay you monthly because they want this issue resolved.
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting is you said you charge by a flat rate. I'm curious. So does it not matter how much is owed or how long it's been owed and some of the variables as to how complicated the case may be? I mean, is it literally just a flat rate that you charge all the clients?
Well, when I say a flat rate, I mean a flat rate for, like you said, different circumstances.
Okay.
The circumstances dictate the amount owed, dictate if that is relevant to the situation. So yeah, it's not just one flat fee, but it's a flat fee for the services that I'm going to provide. But that's going to change based on whatever services I provide.
All right. So just give a little bit more clarification. So is there like a menu price where it's basically determined by the size of the settlement, or is it maybe the number of years that they're delinquent? Is there a formula that you're using to be able to say, here's how I'm going to quote this next client?
You're right. It's a menu price. I have them, already kind of formulated outside of this. And I know based on the time it takes me, I know based on the value, I know, and I've been doing this for a decade. So I have a real easy sense of knowing like what this should be priced as, like I said, based on the value and the complexity of it.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the things that I think is important for my listeners to hear is just basically how you're coming to that conclusion as to what it is it's going to cost for them to have you service their situation. So that's helpful. The next thing that I wanted to do is tell us about now the essence of how you help somebody. What's it like emotionally for them to have that relief of it's been resolved, there's conclusion. How are they expressing that to you? And how do you feel that you've actually made a difference in those clients' lives?
Yeah, it's a huge relief. And, even just them hiring me, they're able to breathe again because they just feel like this is not on my plate anymore. I was so worried about it. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm going up against the IRS, the big bad IRS, and I was basically freaking out, and I wasn't sleeping at night. So even just hiring me gives them a sense of peace, and that something was taken off of their back. But after that, yes, I mean, I have so many good reviews because I'm able to provide them with that relief. I'm able to hopefully, help them pay less than was owed. But even if not paid less than was owed, I'm able to get them into a resolution where they feel calm. They understand now what the future holds. They can have something tangible, almost in their hand. And they can say, okay, I have this balance due. I now understand how I'm going to pay that back. I understand how I'm protected from the IRS, and I can do this moving forward. So the reviews come pouring in. The reviews are easy to do when you're running a good business. But yeah, I get letters from people. I get, phone calls where people are crying. I can see it on a daily basis, the people that I help. And it's a really good feeling. And that's really, like I alluded to at the beginning of the show, that's why I wanted to do something like this.
Yeah.
The Ford execs weren't crying in my arms when I was helping them. But with the small business, the mom and pop, the medium-sized business owners, this is something that's very, very personal to them. And it feels good to help them.
Perfect. Now, I've got two interesting questions to ask. The first one is this. When someone comes to you because they have obviously a need, but they're unwilling to pay for your service or really don't see the urgency in taking care of this, what are the ramifications for the individual who does not resolve the tax obligation that they owe?
Yep. So that's, of course, a good question. The ramifications are huge. The first thing is that the IRS may file an IRS lien, a federal tax lien. So anytime now, I will say the federal tax lien does not show up on the taxpayer's credit report anymore. They stopped doing that about maybe a decade ago, maybe a little less. But that was always a big concern. It does not show up on the credit report. However, it is filed, it's public record. It's filed in the Register of Deeds. So if you're trying to get a mortgage, that's going to create a problem. If you're trying to sell a house, that's going to be a problem. If you're trying to refinance, that's going to be a problem. If you're trying to get any loan whatsoever, that's going to be a problem. So that's, one consequence. But moving on from that, there's many other consequences. There's the IRS will actually certify to the State Department to tell them that you are seriously delinquent on your taxes, and the State Department will revoke your passport. Or certainly they won't let you renew it, and they won't let you get a new one. But they at times do revoke your passport. So that's another one. The IRS may reach out to third parties that are close to you. So that might be your office, that might be your neighbor, that might be your family. That's something that people don't necessarily like when the IRS is talking to people that they know. So that's one. But the biggest ones in terms of really getting people to move and really getting people to resolve the tax issues are the wage garnishment and the bank levy. So the IRS will go in and levy your bank account. They will garnish your wages. And, if for people who have ever had, a judgment against them with a creditor, let's just say a credit card, where you didn't pay your credit card bill, they have to get a judgment in court. The IRS needs no judgment in court. All they need is for you to owe a certain amount of money or any money. Now, there's certain notices that they have to send out in order for them to, before they can move forward with any sort of wage garnishments or levies, but they don't need a judgment whatsoever. Now, the bank levy is a big one, of course, that whatever is in your bank account at that time, they're going to take. Now, usually the bank levies are not continuous. They are a one-time bank levy. So you could put money into the bank the day after the levy happened and you'd be fine. However, they can reissue the levy, a week later, whatever it might be, and then they'll take again whatever's in your bank account. There are some good ways to resolve that, but that's obviously a very scary proposition. And if you have a savings account where you've got a large chunk of money in there, that's a big problem. The wage garnishment is, of course, another big one where they're going to send a notice of levy to your employer, and they're going to take the money from your wages. There is a formula that every person fills out based on some criteria when there is a notice of levy or notice of wage garnishment, but it leaves very little. So you're not going to have much money there. You're not going to be able to pay your bills. And of course, that's where a taxpayer advocate like myself, an attorney, comes in and can help you get rid of that wage garnishment. And the same with the bank levy.
It's interesting. There's all these different pathways that the IRS has to get to those funds that are owed. And so as a taxpayer needing to pay, and you're basically saying, well, I haven't paid this many years, why worry about it now? Yeah, there are threats, but they haven't done anything so far. I could just see someone just being oblivious to the ramifications of this and turning a blind eye to your services and saying, well, I'll just wait, let's see what comes of this. But clearly there are these consequences that come into play.
Yeah.
So here's my next question. I'm a taxpayer. I pay my taxes. I pay them on time. I'm a full taxpayer. How do you answer to someone like myself, the individual who's getting away from paying taxes owed when I am paying all my taxes? I'm curious if that's something that you've ever discussed with someone who basically says, but I'm paying in full. Why are they not paying in full?
Yeah, I think that would annoy people. Yeah, I think that's for sure. The people that are getting away from it, their only reason they're getting away from it is because they don't have the ability to pay. So it doesn't necessarily make you feel any better that that's the case, but the IRS is dropping it because they don't need to spend resources on something where they're not going to get paid and spend more taxpayer money. So the only thing you can think to yourself is, well, hey, if I got into a situation where I owed tax debt and I was then in a bad position where I couldn't pay, then there might be resolution for you. But I certainly understand the annoyance about that. It's more of a practical thing because if they're not going to be able to pay, then it is what it is. They're not going to be able to pay. The IRS is going to stop chasing them. But even if it's like the IRS does only have 10 years. Now that's so, but the bottom line is I would never advise someone to just be like, well, other people are getting away with it. So I'm going to get away with it. And I don't want to pay if they're not paying. It's a very anxiety provoking situation. Not everyone, quote unquote, gets away with it. You're going to go through a lot of anguish. And they went through the anguish and maybe they already kind of got what they deserve just because for the mental anguish there. But I understand the concern.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of celebrity stories of individuals not paying taxes and they end up in prison. So
exactly,
we definitely do know of those.
Exactly. Yeah. Very few times it'll be prison, but it happens. It does happen when it's on a criminal level. But like I said, you'll see all the celebrity issues, and they'll end up paying it. They'll work on something. Sometimes they might say, "Hey, we struck a deal with the IRS," but that just may mean that they paid it over 60 months or something like that. It doesn't mean that they really got a break on it. And if anything, they're getting they're paying more because penalties are extremely high. They can be up to 50% of the total bill. And interest, which is not necessarily so egregious, but still they're paying interest on that loan that they took from the IRS. So they're really not getting away with anything.
Yeah.
Get your copy of Red to Black. It is the book written for accounting professionals to help businesses turn around and go from being in the red to being in the black. This book is written for consultants, business owners, operators, and managers. No matter what your client's product or service, or irrespective of your talent, skill, or expertise, as an accounting professional, you'll be able to use the principles presented in this book to actually become, for your clients, the profit and growth expert. Every chapter is filled with principles and concepts that you can use immediately with your clients to lead them from being in the red to being more profitable in their business, and see you as, in fact, their guide, their coach, with the expertise and wisdom that you can bring from this book. In the book, you have how-to guide explanations. You have models that you can follow. You're shown how to actually calculate and determine the fees for your services, the actual model that you'll use during the implementation of all this, and most importantly, the end-all results with your clients. Get this book now and see what it is you can do to offer this new revenue-producing service as, in fact, the profit and growth expert. For more information on how you can take advantage of this offer, go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today.
So the next one's kind of just a curious question. I haven't seen this in a number of years, but it is something I was familiar with years ago. And it was individuals that would be fighting against the IRS, claiming that they were sovereign citizens and they were relinquishing their citizenship and saying that they didn't have that liability to owe. Have you ever dealt with anyone like that? And how have you seen any of those recently?
It never works. So it's not, that's the short answer. But no, I don't work with people who do that, because it's not a real thing. They may think they found some sort of caveat or some sort of something that says somewhere, and they're interpreting it one way. But then I can't help them. There's no argument that they're going to win on. No one's really ever won on that. And then you get into situations where there might be criminal charges that are brought, not because they have this idea, but because they're intentionally defrauding the government. They're intentionally not paying the government. They're pyramiding their balances owed. I mean, they're just doing it over and over and over and over again. And so there may be criminal issues coming their way, and that's not something that I feel comfortable dealing with, nor do I think is a reasonable position in light of the circumstances.
Yeah, I think the case law is out there that's answered that quite clearly. So I think that's they get hung up on something that they've read or been told. And honestly, I think it's old. It's been decades since I've really seen much in that realm. But nonetheless, they are still out there.
Wesley Snipes tried to do it. He went to jail. I don't know how long ago that was. I remember that was a big one, but it didn't work out well for him.
Yeah, I find it interesting that, he's a celebrity, so it gets into the news and so forth. But it's interesting how they rationalize it and how they try to explain themselves. And they make some good arguments, but at the end of the day, it's so old and there's enough case law with the precedent that it's just not going to be even entertained at this point. So
part of it, though, is I think there are attorneys or kind of third parties who get into people's ears, especially like celebrities, and say, well, you really don't have to pay. You're not required to under this, and this. Like, let's move forward and let's get this done and let's do this. And they kind of get almost brainwashed, or just don't know that the person that they're talking to is not telling them the truth. So,
yeah. Well, I don't want to be that guinea pig. So there you go.
Exactly.
Very good. Well, Steven, this has been an excellent conversation. I want to kind of wrap a few things up here, but before I move any further, I want to mention that as I come to the end, I'm going to come back to you for a closing thought. So as for my listeners, just a few things that I'd like to point out. One, as an offer, Steven's actually put together something here where you can take advantage of a connection and speak with him as to his services and what it is that he's doing. So I'd encourage you to reach out, learn a little bit more about his tax resolution services, and perhaps, if possible, even do a collaboration. If you're an accountant, a bookkeeper, a tax preparer, you might see value in actually collaborating with Steven as it relates to the tax resolution services that he's providing that could benefit your clients, even though it's outside of the services you're currently providing.
Yeah, and that's something that I talk to tax professionals about a lot. When I talk to them, I say, not only do I want us to help each other personally, but we can help our clients. If this is not something that you're offering, this is something that you can help your clients. You can kind of be the go-to person, the trusted person, and they'll know that you have their best interest at heart. And you're able to refer them to someone else who has that expertise.
Exactly. So for that reason, go to the episode description. There you'll find Steven's contact information and definitely take advantage of that. In addition, I want to encourage you to check out Becoming a Profit and Growth Expert, as well as a Professional Tax Preparer. These are two designations that you'll want to consider as you're growing your business and offering quality accounting services, specifically that of a Professional Tax Preparer. This is someone that's actually certified as being proficient in both individual and business returns, doing both the preparation and planning, assisting individuals to not only get paid or rather pay their taxes in a timely manner, but also limit their tax liability legally so that they can actually pay only what is absolutely necessary for their taxes. So definitely check out in the episode description Becoming that of a Professional Tax Preparer, and at the same time that of a Profit and Growth Expert. Now, as it relates to the conversation today, one of the things that I thought was fascinating is Steven, with his history, he obviously moved towards offering tax resolution services. And one of the catalysts for that was seeing how the little guy was struggling. They were getting just basically pennies on the dollar on what was owed to them. And after years of doing this, moved into that tax resolution space to clearly take care of that individual, that business that really perhaps was in a pickle of a situation and owed, but maybe didn't realize what options were available to limit that tax liability. We talked about marketing, how we don't want to necessarily only do the fear mongering when talking about the tax resolution services, that there are a number of positive things that can be emphasized as it relates to marketing these types of services. We spoke of social media, as that's a great place for marketing, and how Steven's leveraged LinkedIn to actually go after not necessarily the clients, but the collaborative relationships with other accounting firms so as to actually enhance the offerings that they're providing to their clients by then extending through his collaboration tax resolution services. And I thought that was an excellent explanation. There's so many people that as bookkeepers align themselves with CPAs to do the bookkeeping work. There are tax preparers that obviously align themselves with tax strategists and planners, as well as tax resolution specialists. Basically, it's our profession collaborating together to best service the needs of our clients. And I think that's just a fabulous thing that as a profession we need to consider and perhaps even do more of. So that was a wonderful little insight. We spoke of basically the options that are available for someone who is in the resolution process. He was able to share a variety of the different choices that an individual could have with the IRS to pay down that debt, whether it be an extended payment term or perhaps a settlement of some sort. Just hearing Steven explain what those various options were, I think were very helpful. The other thing that I thought was very nice is ending on the emotional relief that actually comes from someone who really goes through these types of services, finds that resolution that they were looking for, and finally feels as if there's a pathway out of this debt that they are owing, but perhaps struggle to pay. And as I think Steven said very well, it's not so much that they're maybe walking away from their tax liability. It's the fact that they can't pay it. They don't have the means, and he's providing an avenue for them to be able to take care of that debt that they owe. So that was a really good conversation. The one other thing that I'd like to just also add here is with regards to these services, it's one of those things that I think oftentimes is just not seen because it's not that recurring type revenue that we're accustomed to in the accounting space. With bookkeeping clients, tax clients, it's somebody that's coming back to us year over year, month over month. And clearly that's wonderful as it relates to recurring revenue. But there are these opportunities to offer tax resolution services simply because of the immediate need that exists. And this was a good conversation about what that might look like. So great conversation. What would you like to conclude with or add, Steven?
I would add that you want to, as tax professionals, you want to really make sure that your clients understand that waiting and waiting and waiting, if they have tax debt, is really going to put them in a very bad situation. The earlier that your taxpayers can get to a professional that can help them, the more leverage that they have. And like I said, the IRS has all the leverage. When you have a tax professional, a tax attorney, you take back some of that leverage. But the longer you wait, if you're waiting until a wage garnishment happens or a bank levy, you're losing even more leverage, each and every day and month that you wait. So just make sure that they're aware that, you can just tell them, if you have tax debt, get on this as early as possible. Make sure you find a tax attorney or a tax professional to help you. The worst thing you can do is to stick your head in the sand. And that's what a lot of taxpayers do because they're nervous.
Nervous, scared, and they just don't know what to do next. And at the end of the day, that interest and those penalties just compound. They just get bigger and bigger. So
Absolutely.
Excellent point on that. So here's what I'd like to do as I wrap this up. Definitely, if you've not already subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to have you as a follower and listener to the show. We actually release new episodes each and every week, having guests on the show to talk about these things that matter as it relates to our services, to best service the needs of our clients, and more importantly, get paid what we're worth. So definitely subscribe to the podcast. Love to have you as a listener. Second, I want to invite you to go to universalaccounting.com. There in the site navigation, you'll find podcasts. That podcast section actually has a collection of highlights that we've compiled into playlists that you can binge listen to. I would encourage you to go back through the hundreds of episodes that we have, and more importantly, dive into those things that matter most to you today, whether it be marketing, selling, pricing, training your staff, client onboarding procedures. Maybe it's the client retention strategies that you're looking for to hold on to the clients that you have. Whatever the case may be, go there and check out those various playlists that we've compiled to really kind of focus on the things that matter most to you today. The other thing that I'd like to also mention is GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference. It's where we gather as owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses to hear from the experts, hear what they have to say from the stage so that we can actually work on our business, as well as meet with peers, build new connections, make friendships, perhaps even have these collaborations like we're discussing today. All of these things are intended to help you build the premier accounting firm in your area. I invite you to actually register, get a ticket today, and join me for a GrowCon. On the website, universalaccounting.com, you'll find in the navigation the GrowCon information and the ability to register. So go there now and get your ticket today. The last thing I'd like to mention is if you're interested in certifying your skills and becoming a professional bookkeeper, someone who's proficient in the day-to-day applications of small business accounting, becoming a professional tax preparer, someone that is proficient in both individual and business tax preparation and planning, or perhaps that of a profit and growth expert where you can clearly and concisely offer confidently CFO and advisory services to your clients, go to universalaccountingschool.com. Learn more of what these programs are and how we can assist you and your staff in providing these quality accounting services with the necessary skills so that you can confidently and competently take care of your clients' needs. With that all being said, always remember this: if it's about accounting, it is universal. So give us a phone call, 801-265-3777, and we look forward to our conversation with you. Take care and have a great day and be safe out there.